Okay, so Shuki should jump on soon, and as well as Bruce and Janet, but we will start now. So we're holding is the middle page 77a or 77 Daf Aleph, Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, and we got to the Itmar. Okay, we got to the Itmar. Now the mission again, we're talking about the laws of beheading of a sword. You die through hereg. Hereg is a sword. The Mishnah says there's two groups. One is murder, and the other one is Ir Nidachas. Ir Nidachas is a city that is pushed to serve idols. And then we have to go into understand what weapons and in what method and what ways do we consider is considered murder. So we're analyzing murder. So the Mishnah goes in to say that if a person takes a stone or a piece or a piece of metal, or if a person kavash, if a person confines someone in a way that the person dies because of your force, that confines a person into the water, holds a person into the water, so the person drowns, or holds a person into the fire, the person burns to death. So that's considered murder. However, if the person is pushed into the water or into the fire and can get out, means you push them there, but they can get out. Oh, then it's not. Then you didn't do something right, but you're not chayv misa. You don't get put to death. Or if you send your dog or your other animal to go bite someone or kill someone, so you didn't actually kill them, you just sent your dog. So that's considered a kind of grama. It seems like Rashi is skidding along the lines. The sheet of Rashi is about grama. Grama is a cause. You caused someone to die. You didn't kill someone. There's a difference between grama means to cause someone to die. The question is, and what's defined as cause, and what's considered actually killing someone. For instance, machlekes between Rabbi Huda and Rabbanon, if you take the snake and you hold it in your hand and bring the snake to the person to bite the person, that's not sending your snake. That's like a weapon. Like so instead of shooting a gun or an arrow, you're putting the venom into and even though the snake is putting the venom in, but you're holding the snake to put the venom in and kill the person. Okay. So the Gemara we learned about, the Gemara is talking about last week we discussed the laws of metal, barzel, that something that's sharp metal if it's used to puncture, according to Rashi, if it's used to puncture a vital organ and kill the person by puncturing the vital organ, so it doesn't have to have a shear, doesn't have to have a size, because any as long as it's used as a weapon that could in a way of killing, so then it's considered an act of murder. However, if you can use a piece of metal like a bat, like a piece of wood to hit someone, so then obviously it has to have the shear. If you can use something very light, a small piece of metal, a little knitting thread, knitting I use a knitting needle, high real. If you can use a knitting needle and hit someone, which is not can't give a force that's going to hurt someone, and if that person some reason dies, that's considered then it has to have a shear. Okay. The next thing we learned about was the laws. Tosfos over there says Tosfos disagrees with Rashi. Tosfos feels that the reason, if you can talk about if the reason why metal doesn't have to have a shear because it could puncture, so then anything sharp that could puncture, it could be also a piece of a coat, it could be also a thorn. So therefore, Tosfos is the opinion that the reason why metal doesn't need a shear, everyone agrees metal doesn't need a shear because metal can cause an infection. All right. So the next subject that we learned about was holding someone into the water. If you hold the idea of tzimtzum is if you restrain someone or contain someone in a space, that by you containing them in that space causes their death, if that's considered murder. So the Mishnah holds that it is. And he says that the Mishnah holds it is as long as the person, by containing the person or putting the person in that space, the person on their own can't get out, or through other people's help. We're going to learn soon that containment also includes if the person has other ways to be saved. Not so simple. Rashi holds, I think we learned it in Rashi last week, that he says, for instance, if you push the person into the water and the person can get out, seemingly it means if you push someone into, let's say, the pool, to let's say a shallow pool, or even a deep pool, the person could swim, and there's a ladder to get out, right? So, and the person doesn't get out, then just for some reason allows themselves to stay there and drown. So that's not considered. It's pater. Pater doesn't say it's mutter. You're allowed to do it. It's pater, but it's not. It doesn't give you. You don't have the chiyuv. You don't have the obligation. You don't get put to death. So Rashi could have just said that Rashi says you could get out of there and you don't get out of there. It means you could leave the situation. Someone pushes you into bonfire, and you stay there and you burn to death. It means you could leave the bonfire, or someone puts you into a burning house. You could walk out of the house, right? So Rashi says Adam Acher kayoytz b'zeh. What's Adam Acher? So again, Rashi is going to add there's a lot of machlekes and underlining arguments between Rashi and Tosfos in this sugya. We're not going to get really into Tosfos' shita, but there's a lot of questions are exactly what is the laws of Grumma, of cause, what is the laws, what does it mean, at what point is a person considered a murderer or not? So here Rashi seems to learn that Adam Acher that another person could have taken him out. Let's say you push someone into the pool, and there's a lifeguard on. From Rashi, it seems, unless I'm not understanding the Rashi right, I mean, simple translations, the person could leave. But here Rashi says, another person's there that could take him out. For instance, if you push someone into the pool, even if that person seemingly, according to Rashi, could not swim, but there was a lifeguard on duty, and for whatever reason, the lifeguard is negligent in doing his job, so the lifeguard's not going to get killed because lifeguard didn't do anything. Lifeguard just didn't do his job. It's not obviously you can't just sit there and watch. That's we've learned before that a person is not allowed to watch someone die. You have a chiyuv to help a person. According to Rashi, Smashma, if you were to push someone into a pool where there's a lifeguard on duty, and that lifeguard should be able to help the person and doesn't for whatever reason, that's not considered murder. And by the way, it's not so simple.
Question.
Go ahead.
So this, like all other situations with the death penalty, requires someone to warn you that you can't do it, and what the punishment is right before you do it.
Yes.
So I'm failing to see a circumstance in which someone can warn you that you can't push this person into the water, and they're not also able to rescue them if you would have been able to rescue them.
That's an excellent question. Where you're saying why the witness is not the person that could save. It could let's say the witness. I mean, there's many things. Let's say it's a kind of situation where the witnesses are not qualified to do it. Either the water is it's a raging river, or it's a burning fire, and it's really, or the person is, let's say, crippled. I mean, let's say the person just physically can't. The person's very old. There could be many scenarios where the person's not capable.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but over here the question is, because you raise a very good point with the warning, because it means the person has, but you literally have scenarios like this, unfortunately, and cause of death like this all the time, where people get wild in the pool, in a public pool or a pool, and you say be careful, don't do it, don't be wild, don't push, don't run, you say the whole time, and you have a lifeguard on duty, and nevertheless the person drowns. So it's not like a crazy concept for a person to, even if it has to be intent to kill someone, and say, I know if I push them and they die, I'll be in trouble and all that. That's part of the warning. So it has to be, a person has to have an intention to kill. But it's not the general concept of a person pushing someone into a situation of water where there's someone on hand that could help them, like a lifeguard, where Rashi doesn't say Adam Acher if the person's standing there literally with a floaty and just stands there. It says, it seems like Adam Acher, there's someone there who could help him out, and doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't say. And if the lifeguard doesn't see, I don't know what would be the case, or if the lifeguard, but it seems like Rashi didn't have to add that. Rashi could have just said that the person could climb out of the pool. And then it doesn't. But the problem, obviously, Rashi has with that scenario is that's a very unlikely scenario. I mean, it's like any person could just sit in the water and drown themselves. It's almost suicide if a person could get out and doesn't. But if a person, you push a person into a shallow pool and the person cracks their head and is dizzy and doesn't know how to walk, it can't get out. That's not considered that you could get out, because you caused the person to be in a situation that he cannot get out. So Adam Acher Rashi feels that what would be a scenario would be that the person can't get out, but the lifeguard could save the person. Okay, so that we learned. So there in that case where the person is causing the confinement, but the cause of the confinement ends up. So Rashi uses the word vishagramalai. What's vishagramalai? Means you could have gotten out, you didn't. So the reason why you died is because you stayed there longer than you should have. It wasn't my act of throwing you in that died, because at that moment you could have left, or you could have been saved by a lifeguard. Okay, so the question is, then we went to a question. So he says, how do we know kavash? How do we know that the laws of tzimtzum means you don't kill someone? What's tzimtzum? Tzimtzum means kavash means you can find someone. You put someone in a scenario where the person's going to die. So that's when it gets tricky. When is the person going to die? How long does it take? But how do we know in general by putting someone into water? How do you know that that's considered murder? So he says we have a pasuk. It's an important pasuk. The pasuk says in Bamidbar, "Oy be'eva." Be'eva means like out of hate. Rashi learns the word "oy be'eva." Why is and or? What's the and? Oy be'eva is to say that from there we learn that a person is kavash. That if a person is also contains a person, that's considered an oy be'eva. I'm not necessarily 100% sure why the word eva, which means I didn't pronounce it. Enmity. It means that a person is considered that's considered kavash to contain a person. But containing a person, it takes a kind of level of hate. Well, why would you hold a person's head down? So they throw it into that case, and he could be yada. You killed him with your hands. And the pasuk says v'yamas ma'isuma samaka. You're a murderer. Torah calls you a murderer. So the question the Gemara says here. So therefore, that's the pasuk that we learn. The question that came is, what about damages? Does the laws of Ava of Kavash of Tzimtzum apply? Does the laws, we're just going Chazar from last week. So the laws of containment apply to damages. So damages is a case where a person has to the example is you tie someone's animal up and the sun right away will eventually start killing the animal right away. Are you obligated to reimburse the person who you've killed their animal? So then we come into machlekes between Ravina, which says you are obligated, and Rava bar Rava says you're not obligated to pay. And the argument Ravina says you are obligated to pay because Ravina says that in general we find that a person, when it comes to damages, even if a person's a shogeg, even if a person does it by mistake, or even if a person does it sometimes in an oinus, so then you still have to pay. I mean, you damage someone's good. You have to pay half the amount, whatever. If you're muad, if you're tam, whatever, depending on the scenario. But damages is damages. If a person's sleeping, we learned that oinus is sleeping. You're sleeping and you break someone's property. You damage someone's property. You have to reimburse someone. So damages is more strict than killing. If you kill someone by mistake, you don't get put to death. And so if killing is you're considered liable if you contain someone or something. So the same thing would be considered by damages. So damages is more strict. That's Ravina's thinking. Rabacha says no, because Rabacha again uses the pasuk be'eva. The only way we know that containment is considered murder is because there's a clear verse, and the clear verse says ritzeachu. Whenever it says in the pasuk hu, it's coming to eliminate something. And what is it eliminating? It's coming to be memait anything else. That only this scenario the Torah considers you as responsible. In the case of our case, it's talking about responsible for murder. But you can't learn from it in any other case. It means when it says who, it's a miut, only in this scenario. It means in case of murder, but in the case of damages, there's no proof to say that you would have to. There's no verse to teach us that you would have to pay for containing something that causes damage, like an animal dies in the heat. Now the question is, this is where we get back to our sugya. Is we have three cases of Rava. Rava's first case is that what about starvation? You starve someone to death. Is that considered containment? How do you starve someone to death? You contain them in the event to the situation where they starve to death. So Rava says that's not considered murder in the case according to Torah. Why? The Torah says so Rashi gives us a definition. Again, why does the problem, why Rashi in our sugya, we have to be in a very delicate situation is that the pasuk that we use, be'eva, which teaches us that tzimtzum, that containment is considered murder, the same thing, according to one opinion, doesn't apply to damages. Why doesn't it apply to damages? Why is it not considered damaging someone's property? Means forget the verse that teaches us that only containment by murder. But why, in theory, what's the logic that when you contain someone's animal in the sun, you shouldn't be responsible to reimburse them? So Rashi gives a reason. Rashi says, because it's grama. Grama is cause. You caused the death. You didn't kill. What do you mean you caused the death? You didn't kill the animal. You put the animal in the sun. You tied the animal up. The sun killed the animal, not you. You made the scenario happen. So right away we see that from what Rashi is teaching us is that symptom containment is right away grama, is cause. So, but it's not. But in the Torah teaches us in case of murder, it's a kind of cause that you're responsible for. So then we have to figure out what is there another case of grama, of cause that's not considered murder that we can't include in the pasuk oy be'eva. So here, what is the case? The case is that Rava says is starvation. What's the difference between putting someone in the sun and starving someone to death? So here Rashi has to teach us something important. Why? Because Rashi says the b'shasha kafase, when you tie someone up for starvation, ein kan davar hariga. There's nothing here that could kill the person. In the sun, if you tie a person in the sun, everyone agrees that's considered murder. Because right away the sun, which is going to kill the person, starts to kill the person. Over here, there's nothing to kill the person. What happens is that time kills the person because you're preventing the person from eating, and therefore with time the person will starve to death. So this is a weaker grama than the grama of sun, because here the lack of so to say the tool of death is not there. It comes on its own. That's what Rashi says. The b'shasha kapasei ein kan davar hariga, v'harav ba me'elef. Starvation. Hey, Bruce, we're just doing chazara. Starvation comes on its own. And v'hoilechu v'chazing is more than that. It gets stronger. Even right away, initially, starvation, the first day you're a little hungry, the second day you're very hungry, the third day you're extremely hungry, and let's say the fourth day you die of starvation. So it comes with, so here he adds the word, v'hoilech v'chazer l'achaz man kol shah. So here we have the idea that Rashi mentions before, he teaches us something. That when a person, that if you push someone into a pool, and the person could get out of the pool, or there's a lifeguard. Rashi says, there's a lifeguard. So even though the lifeguard it was negligent or whatever, the person could have gotten out, didn't. And you pushed them there, but Rashi adds the word over there, v'shagramaloi. Means the fact that you could have gotten out means you didn't drown immediately. And if you didn't drown immediately, eventually you drown. So it's like starvation. You eventually starve to death. There's a lot of, you have to collect, these are very complicated Rashis. All the Rashis are coming to teach us because Rashi is trying to define how is their grama, is their cause by death that's considered murder, and when is it grama, when is cause not considered murder? So Rashi says grama is only considered murder when right away the person starts to die. And Rashi teaches us if the person could get out of the fire or out of the water, so the water is no longer a tool of death. It's the time in the water that causes you to die. So to starvation. Starvation, of course, starvation kills a person. But it's starvation that happens with time. The death sentence is not there right away. Whereas the fire or the sun on the person right away starts to kill the person. So here's Rashi again says that it's grama with time. Here the death is standing right there. So again, Rashi before learns that if a person can get out of the pool, it's like starvation. He uses the word shah because he says that the time kills the person. Because why didn't you get out? Or why didn't the lifeguard save you? Because we're going to learn many, many more cases now like this. Then he says, what about the next case Rava brings down? What about if you put someone in the heat or in the cold? So then it's considered murder. You put someone into the sun or into the freezing cold, right away the frost, it's amazing. They had a story, just read on the news last week, where there was a group of people in Kansas City watching the Kansas City Chief game. It's an amazing thing, and no one's even like the law is just going. There was a group of people, friends, watching the Kansas City Chief game, and they were watching at a friend's house. And I'm not sure the scenario. Whatever happened was A day later, the guy walks out of his house in his backyard and finds his friends that were watching frozen to death. So literally, the friends came to his house, and some way or another, they froze to death in his backyard after the game. Seemingly, I think what the law is thinking is that they had a little too much to drink, and they left his house, and he didn't know, and they went outside and they froze to death. So it wasn't his problem. They're not calling him. They're not calling it murder. We see clearly a case where a person was the people last week went outside to watch the game, and they went outside at some point. I mean, it doesn't seem that the law feels that he kicked him out of the house and locked him out. Why? Why? Because why didn't they leave? It wasn't like it was a fortress over there. Why didn't they
Because
just
they won.
who won? The Kansas City Chiefs? Or whatever
Yeah.
I'm saying. But the families of the people are going a little crazy, but the law enforcement say we don't see any foul play. Whatever they were outside, they froze to death. But we see this concept of where we have questions.
I think that they're still investigating if there's foul play or not. It's still an ongoing investigation. Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ariel. Ariel is familiar with it.
Yeah. I know the whole story. I read it in the New York Post and I saw the in the sun.
Yes. So if you put someone in the frost or the fire, that's considered murder. But what about if you put a person in a scenario that the sun will eventually come? Again, it becomes time. The sun is not here now. The sun will come. This frost will come. Is that considered murder? So Rava says no. Why? Rava again says, what's the Rashi say the reason is? The thing that kills was not ready to kill. The sun wasn't out yet. It didn't get cold yet. Let's say there's a very cold front coming and you lock someone outside, but eventually the next morning the person will freeze, but not now. Now it's okay. It's okay temperature. So Rashi says here Rashi adds something that he doesn't add before. That God takes care of these situations. Rashi here puts in the first time that when you cause grama, death, even though the hariga is not there, he doesn't mention this by starvation, and he doesn't mention this by nezikim, by damages. He only mentions it the first time over here by putting someone out in the sun or in the frost that eventually is going to get sun and frost. That God, he says, din shemaim, God takes care of such a situation, but not for Bezdin. Because again, it's only grama, and again, Rashi defines when is grama not murder, when the cause of death is not right on the scene. So therefore, Rava comes to the third case. Rava says, what about if you put someone in front of a lion? So here Rava says another reason, because it's not if you are here to put someone in front of the lion, so the lion was close enough to kill you, and even if you wouldn't tie them. You couldn't have saved him from the lion. So the Rava comes teaches another case. What happens if you just add to the death? The death is going to happen anyways. You add to the death. Again, this goes, I don't know, Bruce, if you could tell us if this crawls into the laws of Dr. Kevorkian, where a person is dying from cancer and he was, where they had all those cases where he was bringing on the death earlier. If that's considered tying someone up to lion. I mean, what was their argument? The argument was that they're going to die anyways, and they're going to, and it's going to be a painful death, and they'd rather die now. And they willingly signed off for it. But the argument is that considered murder? If a person willingly signs off for suicide and is not sick, I'm not sure what the laws are for that. But here, that was the whole argument at the time. So here Rashi says because the lion's going to kill the person anyways. And then we had the next case was that Rava holds that mosquitoes, the person could have ran away, and when you tie the person down, the person gets stung to death. And Ravashi says even there it's not considered. Ravashi goes even further than Rava, because even though the mosquitoes right away start stinging, but the mosquitoes that sting in the beginning don't kill, and only the later ones, and therefore it's considered shah, it's considered time that the killer, it's like he compares it more to starvation. So this is where we're holding. And Rashi says that was a Tosfos that I wrote on the chat. The Tosfos says that even if you,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a super quick question. When it comes to the idea of these grummas in general, when it comes to statistics, when certain numbers are large enough, or if for instance, you flip a coin 200 times, you're bound to get a few times where it's like 7 of them are like heads. And even though it's such a seemingly random occurrence, if you do something enough times, or if you have a large enough pool of information, you get rid of a lot of that randomness in the occurrence because you can figure out what that random is. When it comes to these ideas of like a grama, like I know that even like the Shabbos switch over the years was argued back and forth on whether or not it's a grama. Like, one of the main arguments is that, like, the light might come on, it might come off, but if you let it go for 4 or 5 minutes, eventually by flipping random over and over again, it'll eventually hit true, right? And so, like, but does that negate being a grumma? Like, knowing for a fact that somebody is going to starve to death, knowing for a fact somebody can't outrun the mosquitoes. Is that what this whole argument is? Is like knowing for a fact something will happen, even though it's statistically unlikely once in a while, but in the larger scope of things, it's going to happen. Is that enough for it to be called a grumma?
No, it's not even a question of statistics. 100% of people, or let's call 99% of people will starve to death. Here, it's not about the certainty of death. It's the gram over here is not about the certainty of death. It's about that the death isn't on hand. Rashi, that's why Rashi keeps on saying, he's not the cause of death.
But it's just not the direct action.
It's not direct action. And therefore,
Okay.
it's not direct action. That's what Rashi says it's shah, it's time. Therefore, Rashi includes that. For some reason, Rashi includes that in the case of throwing someone in the pool. If you throw someone in the pool, that the person could get out of the pool, or there's a lifeguard on the scene. Again, like I was telling Ariel Green before, this happens all the time when people knock people into the pool and the lifeguard's on duty and doesn't save, whatever reason, is negligent or doesn't see, and the kid dies, drowns.
Right, but even something where there was like an action taken, like imagine like the same leniency can be used for, say arguing with someone who has heart problems and bringing them so heated to the point where they end up having a heart attack. People could say that it was malicious or intentional, and this would say like, oh, you're not the person who did that. Like from a court perspective, this leniency would let that person like be protected from having done a direct action.
Yeah, that's why Rashi adds in one of the cases that's din shemayim. I saw in other commentaries they bring it in every scenario. Rashi mentions in the case of putting someone in the sun that eventually will burn or eventually will freeze, is din shemayim, means that the court can't. I mean, again, I'm almost certain that if you cause someone to die by knowing they have a weak heart and scare them or whatever it is, or work them up, get them angry, knowing that it's going to cause a heart attack. I find it very hard to believe in Torah would consider that. Again, the Rambam gives one. The Gemara doesn't talk about one thing the Rambam talks about. Now, though the Rambam says halachically that Bezdin won't put someone to death because there's no warning and all that, the Torah gave power to the Chachamim that not to be stupid. And what does it mean not to be stupid? If you see a person who's trying to find all the loopholes and all the ways, then the Chacham are allowed to take action. And they don't kill a person, but they can find him, they put him into a box and they feed him foods and he dies from an exploded stomach and all that. The Chacham but it's not one of the 4 death penalties. In some ways, it seems to me a lot worse, but to be starved and then to be given barley, and the barley causes the person to die. But the rabbis have been given the strength to do what's right in the case that they feel is right. And that's different than Shemaim. Shemaim, in certain cases where Torah says, I'm not doing anything. But in the case of murder, the rabbis have been given the strength that they're not, if they see someone who knows all the loopholes and all the ways to get out of it, and knows how to scare this guy for a heart attack, and is causing it over and over again, a serial killer that knows how to get around it, the Chacham were given the power by Torah to deal with this person, but not in the way of the 4 sentences. They put him in a box. Either they lock him up or they put him in a box and they feed him in a way that he dies. But I should say, the Tosfos I said last time was that even if the person was already starving when you locked him up or her up, Tosfos learns that it's very interesting. Because the Tosfos learns that starvation is a very unique case, different than the sun. The sun is almost like a weapon of murder for this situation. Starvation there's no weapon here. Starvation is no weapon here. It's preventing a person from living. It's almost like your case of the heart attack. It means in starvation, there's no weapon. You're preventing the person from eating, and the person needs to eat to live. And therefore, Tosfos says that even if a person's starving and you lock them up, it's still every minute there's no weapon of murder, because it's only that they're lacking the ability to eat. So that's what Rashi says. There's 2 parts to the grama, to the cause that's not considered murder. One is that the weapon is not here; it's only going to come later. So it's a weaker grama than putting the person right in the sun. And the second thing Rashi says is, if the weapon is not there, starvation is no weapon. Starvation is prevention from a person from living. And it happens to be that Hashem created a person that there's two ways you could die. One way is someone kills you, or someone prevents you from living. What's it mean, preventing you from living? Because you need to eat to live. And if you don't eat, you can't live. And that's what Taisa says. Even if you lock up a person who's starving, that at that moment he's alive. And there's no weapon because it's just prevention of food. You're preventing the person from giving themselves the ability to continue to live. It's a crazy concept that Rava is breaking down in all these cases. It means Rava is repeating different cases. He's not just thinking in his head, what are cases of Grama? Each case is unique, why it's not considered a case of tzimtzum that the pasuk teaches us that it is murder. Okay, so those are the cases that we have so far. This is according to Taisus and Rashi. Now we're holding Itmar. Sorry that we did Chazar because it's a complicated Gemara. Itmar. Now the case like this. We're holding in the art scroll, it would be 77a1. We learned Kafalav Gigus, you put someone into a barrel, or cover a person in a barrel. Or Uparalav Maziva, or you open up a ceiling or roof on a person. So the person themselves were in a good space. So here you didn't touch the person, you took a barrel and put it on top of the person. And by putting the barrel on top of the person, you suffocate the person. Or you open up the maziva and the person is sleeping in a nice room, and now the person's freezing and dies. You know, there was a case, I think it was based on a true story years ago. I saw this a video, a film with my wife about a case, I think in Washington State, that the children kept on dying. The children kept on dying. They kept on taking them to these hospitals. I think in Eastern Washington, the children kept on dying from poison, and they felt that the mother was poisoning her kids, and she was taken to jail. They took away the kids, and they were putting her away for murder. And it was it was a true story. And basically, what happened is that it turned out that the child had a special medical situation, and that there was no way for the parent. They thought she was putting in antifreeze into the milk. And it turned out not, because so that's also like you can't. You're trying to figure out why is the kid dying. You didn't, there's no the weapon slowly. Poison is also very complicated. So here you open up the roof, and a person starts to freeze. So here's a machlekes. The Gemara says that the problem is that we don't know who said what. We have a Messiah, we have a tradition that there was an argument, and we don't know who argued what. Rava and Rab Zera. Maybe we don't know because Rab Zera left town, right? Rab Zera moved to Eretz Yisrael. Chad Amar once said chayiv, that putting a barrel on a person or opening up a roof on the person is considered murder. But Chad Amar Potter, and one says it's not murder. So, but we don't know who said what. So the Gemara says, Tistayim, the Rava Hu Damar Potter. Let's assume that Rava is the one who says that the person is it's not considered murder. Why? Because we have Rava who said before in last week, Damar Rava, Kafase Meis Berav Potter. That here we want to compare this to a case of starvation, which is very interesting. Very interesting. What's interesting over here? What's the difference between drowning someone and suffocating someone? Drowning someone, the water is the weapon. You die from the water coming into your lungs. So water is a weapon. Suffocating someone, why does a person die from suffocation? A person needs air to breathe. There's no weapon of killing a person. It means the Torah doesn't look at a pillow or a barrel on top of a person's head as a weapon because it didn't kill anyone. You didn't hit the person. A person, again, like food, a person needs oxygen to live. By preventing the person oxygen, there's no tool of murder. And therefore, we would assume that Rav is the one who holds that suffocation is not considered murder, which is an amazing question. Someone pulls chas v'shalom, someone's oxygen tank, someone's living on oxygen in a hospital or something, or in their home, whatever, and you prevent the person from oxygen tank. Is that considered murder according to this question? Because there's no active murder. The person needs the oxygen to live. You prevented the person from having access to their oxygen, like in the case of suffocation. So here he says, so we would assume that Rava is the one who holds it's not considered murder. Because Rava says, Kafasi Meisber, if a person's tied up and dies of starvation, it's Potter. So the Gemara says, no, that wouldn't be, it's not Rava who says Potter. Why? Adarabba, let's assume to time the Reb Zeru who Damar Pater. It's Reb Zeru who says that it's not considered murder. Why? What's the case? Because we have a case. Reb Zeru says, the Omer Reb Zeru says, Hayman the Ailil Lechavre Bebisa the Shisha. We find many times in Torah that there's a space or a room made out of marble. Shisha is a kind of marble, a kind of stone that prevents any oxygen from coming into the room. Va'adikle shraga, and then you light a candle in this room of marble. Umeis chayiv. So why did you die? So what are we saying? Why did Reb Zeir say chayiv? Because here there was a weapon. The weapon was the little flame in such a room. It means if you light a flame in a regular room, that there's not enough. There's oxygen coming in. But here it's not that there's lacking oxygen, but if you open a flame in a room that has no oxygen, this little candle will cause the person to die from the smoke. So v'adik shraga umeis chayiv. So the Gemara says time adik le'shraga only because he lit a candle. Halayadik, but if you left a person in the room of shayish, which they would die anyways from suffocation, just not maybe as fast. So it's Reb Zeru who holds that suffocation is not considered murder. So the Gemara says no, you can't say that's Reb Zeru. Amrei Hasan, he said, "V'lei sharga lei maschil havala b'shaisa hacha v'lei sharga nami maschil havala b'shaisa." He says that over there. So he said, there, regarding someone who's trapped in a marble chamber without the burning lamp, so foul ear would not have begun to form at the moment of his of lighting the candle. But here, regarding the barrel placed on someone's, even without a burning lamp, the herb begins to form at the moment of his placement. So here, basically, what they're saying is that a room of marble, it's longer to suffocate, where a barrel causes immediate suffocation. And therefore, there's no proof that the Reb Zeira would hold in the case of a barrel that you would be potter, because shayish, it takes much longer. And therefore, we could say Rava we could say that Reb Zeira would hold its chayiv in a barrel, and Rava, according to the case of starvation, would be the one that holds that does make a difference, because there's no weapon. So basically, the machlekes between Reb Zeir and Rava, according to the answer the Gemara is, Rashi says, "Time in the adik v'shagar shizman shizimin esahorik." Okay, that you caused the death. What's the death? Through the candle, through the smoke. So he says, "Had loy adik v'shagar meis behevel piv doimed de kipa love higigas pater." So we assume that why would a person die in a room of marble alone? Because you would die from lack of fresh oxygen. Where Rashi says, "B'shayta miyad b'shas k'fiyah maschel v'achach chazak." So here, but it takes time. Whereas the case of a barrel happens right away. So what do we see from here? That Reb Zeira doesn't subscribe to Rava's whole situation. Rava has a chiddush. Rava's chiddush is that a lack of weapon is considered pater, and suffocation is a lack of weapon, just like starvation is a lack of weapon. Reb Zeira doesn't subscribe to that. It doesn't mean a lack of weapon. If you're causing the Reb Zeira only seemingly, according to the answer to the Gemara, only holds of Grama and Shah. What's Grama and Shah? Is it going to happen right now, or is it going to happen soon? If you light a candle, it happens right now. And if you're in a room of large room of marble, it takes time to die. Whereas a barrel suffocates a person immediately. Rav has another problem. It doesn't have to do with immediately or not. There's no weapon here. You're preventing a person from breathing. And preventing a person from breathing is like preventing a person from eating. That's like murder. There's no weapon of murder. And that's a chiddush that Rava holds, not Reb Zeira. And therefore the Gemara's conclusion is when they had an argument, putting a barrel is considered potter, it's only Reb Zeira. It's Rava. Reb Zeira would hold that putting a barrel over someone's head is considered murder. The question is, what's the obvious question? The obvious question is opening up a maziva. Why is that? Opening up maziva is the reason, according to Rava, why that wouldn't be murder, because we said that cold is considered murder. Cold is a weapon. Cold is like water. So frost is a weapon. You can't say that person dies because they're not warm. The cold kills the person. So in that case, why would it be pater? Because it takes time when you open the roof. But the barrel, even though it happens right away, Rava would say it's not considered murder because suffocation is not considered murder, not because there's time. So it turns out that this argument between putting a barrel on someone's head and opening up the maziva are two reasons why they would be pater. The reason why you'd be pater for suffocating is because suffocation is not considered murder. There's no weapon, and if you open up a roof, the cold only comes eventually. I'm assuming that's what it is. Ariel, is there anything in the arts in the Stein thoughts on that? Why would opening a maziva not be? See the art says over here. If one opened the hole in a plaster of a roof over a sleeping person and he died from, that's what he's saying, he's sleeping, so he doesn't die right away in exposure to cold. Seems that's the reason.
Yeah, it just has the halacha here. It's one overturns a vat upon another and he's slowly asphyxiated, or if you remove the roof and cause him to die of exposure, he's not executed. That's just what the halacha is.
So it's two reasons. One, the reason why of the cold is because it's eventual, and the reason it's a grumma with time, and the reason of suffocation is because suffocation is not murder. Bruce, is there anything close to that in American law that suffocation would not be considered murder? Someone puts a pillow on someone's face, not considered.
No, I think that would be homicide. Which degree I can't tell you, but it's certainly homicide.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine a scenario in which somebody, happens to be in a room where you can suck all the air out of it. Like you accidentally suck all the air out of it, you might not be considered having intentionally suffocated someone. But even in that scenario, I think there would still be, manslaughter charges for someone who did something like that. Rabbi, going in a different direction, it's a frigid -15, -20, Celsius temperature is super cold. Even, for someone comes to your door asking to be let in and sit with your warmth, and you shut the door on them. Could you argue that you're using the cold, maliciously or not, that would have been like a murder weapon?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, if
would you be obligated to let that person in your house? Should they die because you closed your door on them? You knew that, like you were saying before about, the cost of time here, that, if they didn't come in and sit by your fire, they wouldn't make it through the night, right?
Shuki, I'm going to say no on that. I've learned this from Yo Elite. There's a halacha with life support, right? Where once you give life support, you can't take it away. But if you don't ever give them the life support, then it's okay. So I think it's the same thing here, in that if you're not, your inaction is not causing harm. The harm was already happening.
They're already outside in the freezing cold with nowhere to go.
Yeah, you haven't changed the situation.
But I'm not sure, Ariel, according to Rava, if even in the case of life support, that would be considered murder. I'm not sure if life support is any different than suffocation. I think the definition of suffocation is that
right. But I'm saying if you haven't given it to them, then you haven't done anything.
Okay,
you can withhold, but you can't withdraw.
That's surely. But I'm saying even if you withdraw, it means if you were to pull the plug, chas v'shalom or whatever, on a person, according to Rava, if you were to pull a plug on a person, according to Rava, I'm not sure that's considered murder, because
because this whole argument is you're letting nature take its course instead of having an artificial thing holding them alive.
There's no weapon here. When you pull a plug, there's no weapon. The machines are keeping the person alive.
I agree.
Interesting.
Yeah, but this is Rava's opinion again. It doesn't say it's mutter. It just says that it's not, it's pater. Now here, okay, now we're gonna go to another case. So again, we're learning different cases of grumma, that where there's grumma is not considered murder. It means classic grumma is you tie a person up in the sun or in the cold, that's considered murder. Or the most classic is if you hold someone's head into the pool under the water, that's considered grumma and that's murder. Here Rav is now going to give, we're going to have a whole bunch of cases. Sulam, Tris, Samonim, and Kaisel. What are the 4 cases? One is you prevent a person from climbing. It means you throw someone into a pit where they had an exit, and then you take away the exit, you take away the ladder, and the person dies from in the pit. Again, doesn't say how the person dies in the pit. If there's water there, or if there's, I guess there's water in the pit. Otherwise, it would be it'd be time. The question is, had Yehuda not saved Yosef, right? What are the brothers argue with what does Yehuda argue with the brothers? He says, why should we have our hands in blood and killing our brother? Let's throw him into the pit, and the pit time will kill him, right? So had Yehuda not taken him out, he would have died in the pit. It seems like the brothers didn't consider that murder. Otherwise, what's the difference if they kill him with their hands, if they put him in the pit? So putting him in the pit, according to the brothers, was Grama. And it says, the Gemara tells us there was Nachashim and Akravim. There were snakes and scorpions in the pit, and those should have killed him eventually. But that was also, they considered, it's like they didn't consider that murder. That was their thinking, right? Maybe they didn't know there was scorpions and snakes. But here we say there's 4 cases. One is there's an exit, sulam. You take away a person's exit to save themselves. Tris, another form of protection. You shoot someone that has a bulletproof vest, and then take off the vest. So now you're taking away the person's protection. A tris is like a shield. Samonim, you hurt someone in a way that, but there's medicines available to save the person. The person doesn't use then you spill the medicines. Means at the time of the act, there was medicines that Samanim is a medicine. There was ointments that could help a person, and then it's not there. And the third case is Kaisel, Koyach Koyachai, where you throw something off of something else. It means you could take a stone and throw it at a person. That's obviously murder. But if you bounce a stone off a wall, is that considered murder? Right? The Gemara brings down that they had a game basically in ancient times, similar, interesting take on dodgeball, right? So we have dodgeball is that we take an inflated ball and we throw it at each other. If you hit the person and they're out, or if they catch it, you're out, right? In those days, it doesn't say it was an inflated ball. It was obviously a ball that could be used as a weapon itself. It was a hard ball. And you bounced it off the wall, and then the person who caught the ball was able to throw it at you, and then you were out. So basically, the theory of the game was that you have to try to bounce the ball off the wall to give yourself time to run away. If you don't bounce it in such a way so the person will have access to the ball soon enough and be able to hit you with the ball, and then you'd be out. That was the game, it seemed like, of the dodgeball of the day. I'm talking about 2,000 years ago. Okay, so he says, hey, Janet. So he says like this, the first case, let's just do one case here. Amar Rava, dachvul bar, you push someone into a pit. And at the time when you push someone into the pit, v'sulam babar, there's a ladder. So you push someone in the pit, the person can climb out of the pit. Uba acher, and someone else comes, v'silko. These are all brought down in Rambam, these cases. And someone else comes and takes away the ladder. So that's not murder, because when I push the person in, no problem. When I push the person in, not sorry me. When the person, the person who's is committing the act of questionable murder, push the person into the bar, that person could argue, he or she, that there was an exit, there was a ladder, and someone else came and took out the ladder, so it's not considered murder. Now here's the chiddush. Rava says, afilu hu kadim v'silku, means when someone else takes it out, then obviously there was no act of murder. What happens if you push someone into the pit? There's a ladder, and then you run and grab the ladder yourself. So you've done both things. You push the person into the pit, which is an act that could kill the person. At the time when you push the person in the pit, there was a ladder to get out, but then you went and grabbed yourself the ladder. So is that considered murder or not?
Wait,
So
would there be any difference if it was a 2-person crime? Person A shoves him in the pit, person B grabs the ladder. Neither of them are individually are culpable of murder, potentially.
Rava puts them both in the same case. Rava says it doesn't make a difference if it's you, but halachically, it's a difference. It means because the argument could be if there's it could be maybe that was the scenario of the brothers. Maybe that's what they did when there was a way out when they pushed them in, and then they took away the way out. it says someone else takes away the ladder, and then he says even if you afilu who called them v'silko potter. Why? Why does Rashi say? Why does Rava say the person is potter? So he says like this. Right? So the Gemara says the beidna the shaidi yoichala alasu, because that it doesn't make a difference who takes out the water, who takes out the ladder. At the moment when he was shoved in, there was an exit, there was a ladder, and he was able to escape, and therefore it's not considered murder. Let's see Rashi. Rashi explains. Afilu who, even if you're the person who takes away the ladder, the person himself or herself who pushes the person in is the same person who, after they push in, if before you push in, that's considered murder, because when the person fell into the pit, there was no exit. But if you, after you push him in, you pull out the ladder. So he says no. The Rava says it's not considered murder halachically. Now he says, so here's the crazy thing that Rashi says. Again, Rashi comes and teaches us. These Rashis are very complicated because Rashi goes to the extreme in all these cases. If I just learned to Gemara, what would I think? You push someone into the pit, and after you push them in, a minute, 2 minutes, you pull out the ladder. So according to Rashi, that's not even a question. We don't need Rava to teach us, because as soon as the person fell in the pit, the second they fell in the pit, they should have climbed out. So what could be a case where the person falls into the pit, he gets pushed into the pit, and can't climb out because you took away the ladder? So Rashi gives us a chiddush. Before the person falls in, means you push, and before, let's say it's a 20-foot pit, you push, takes a few seconds, split seconds, and then right away before the person even lands to get on his or her feet to climb out, you pull out the ladder. So there was no scenario for the person to save themselves, because the person didn't land yet. Nevertheless, Rava says a chiddush, it's not considered murder. And even if the same person does it, if someone else does it before he falls down, it's less of a chiddush because you weren't the person who pulled out the ladder. But even if you push someone and before the person lands, you pull out the ladder, so the person had no chance to save themselves. Rava says that's not considered murder. Rashi says that, then this is a chiddush. Koidim v'salku koidim nefilasi shazah. It's still potter. Why? He says beidna d'shaydi yochel alasu. Why? He says when you pushed him, there was an exit. When the act of murder happened, what's that? Because the Rava is saying, where's the act of murder? The act of murder is the pushing, and when there was a pushing, there was an exit. Again, this is not saying that you're going to walk around scot-free, and the Chachamim, they have to take the law in their own hands. Sometimes they will, and God will deal with you in His time. That's all true, but that has nothing to do with the questions. Is there an act of murder now? And Rava says no. Well, potter al d'chia, you're potter on the pushing, and mishum salak loy matzis l'chiyuvay. So what do you want? Where's the act of murder? The pulling out the sulam, the ladder, that's not an act of murder. You pulled out a ladder. So that's a Rava again. Rava breaks everything down. When you pushed it, there was a ladder. So where's the act of murder? Because you pulled out the ladder, but that's not an act of murder. That's like starving someone. Rashi says, "Poter al d'chia, mishum solek leimatzis l'chiyuv with the grama balmu." That's a kind of grama that's not considered chiyuv. Why is that grama different than putting someone into the sun? Because there's no weapon. It's the same thing. Rashi is teaching us, if I'm understanding this correctly, Rashi is teaching us that Rava's chiddush over here is that you need a weapon. There's no weapon of killing. The ladder is not a weapon. Pulling a ladder is not a weapon. The reason why the person is dying is because of the pushing. And when the person was pushed, there was a ladder. There was an exit. And when you pulled out the ladder, it's only grama. That's a kind of grama that's not considered from the pasuk oy eva. These are all chidushim. So he says, afilu, he says, and we'll do one more case quickly. Rava says, zarak chetz, you shoot an arrow at a person, and when you shoot the arrow at the person is holding a shield. Vitris biyadei. Someone comes and grabs the shield out of the person's hand, so now he has no shield to protect himself or herself from the ladder, from the chetz, from the arrow. And then here again, Rava says, you run after you shoot the arrow, you speedily run and grab, hypothetically, right? And you grab the arrow, the shield away from the person. Filu who called him not like potter. Why? Why is he potter? They be eating the shy they ba mispik piske gera. Because when you shot the arrow is going to be stopped. So what we hear is the pushing itself. And you have to remember, Rava doesn't sit in the base medrash thinking of a million different ways of murder. Every case has to be unique. The Gemara is quoting another case. I mean, there's something in the second case that's different than the first case halachically. What was the first case? The first case was pushing someone into a bar. When you push someone into a bar, that's an act of murder if there's no way to get out. Because right away, it's like putting someone in the sun. You push someone into the bar, the person's going to die right away. I'm assuming that the bar has water in it, and you can't get out. If you push someone, because if it's not, then the person dies of starvation. It's no different than starvation. So if you push someone into the bar, we have to assume the bar has water. So therefore, you're pushing someone into the water. The person has no exit. That's an act of murder. Here, you're shooting an arrow at someone. So that's also an act of murder, right? It's a different kind of act of murder. You mean you're shooting something. You're not pushing someone into death. You're shooting death at a person. That's the difference. You're throwing death at a person with a weapon. But at that moment, it wasn't death. Why? Because the person had a way to save themselves. What was the way? With the shield. And what you did now was, by taking away the shield, you're now creating that now the person has no way. Now the person is going to die because of cause, because there's an arrow coming at him. But when you shot the arrow, it wasn't an act of murder, even though you used the weapon to throw at the person, because the person had a way to prevent the arrow from coming at him. And therefore, the shield, taking away the shield, is not considered an act of murder, it's also grama. That's the chiddush. I should say the Rashi quickly. The person who shoots the arrow, and after he shoots the arrow, he runs. Before the arrow hits the person, but not till hatris and takes away the shield. Himenu. That's considered grama also. It's only considered cause. So the difference, I guess, between why Rava adds the difference between the bar and the arrow is the bar is you're pushing someone into death. The arrow, you're throwing death at the person. So you may think that throwing death at a person, you push it through death at a person. So what if the person has a way to prevent it? But nevertheless, Rava says the chiddush is still considered grama, because as long as the person at the moment was going to be saved, so even if you're throwing death at a person, nothing changed from what you threw at the person. It means you're throwing death at a person, and the person dies from that death. But because they had a chance to prevent themselves from it, so therefore it's not considered an act of murder, because you only took it away later, and later it's grama cause. All right, everyone, we're going to continue the other cases Be'ez Hashem next week. And Rava keeps on going. The cases keep on going from one case to the next to give us different ideas of grama, different ideas of cause, different ideas of koyach. What does it mean coming from your strength, not your strength? It's an amazing thing. Gemara goes into everything. Gemara says in conclusion that if you throw something that falls down from gravity, means if you throw it up and it falls immediately right down, that's not considered murder. But if you were to throw something at someone and it makes, let's say, a U shape, so then the way to make a U shape is that the reason it keeps on going, let's say east or right or left, is from your throwing it, then it is considered possibly murder. These are all cases that we have to analyze. Where's the strength? Where's the act? What's considered the act of murder, and all that, etc. All right, everyone.
It's interesting to consider that in those days they didn't quite have the math for like ballistic trajectories, and so like if they were like throwing rocks off a building, they weren't like calculating exactly where it would go. They knew how to throw, where to throw it from like practice. But that concept is still applicable even to like someone who says, aiming a turret or a bomb, knowing that it might go up all the way and reach some peak and then fall, versus like going in a ballistic trajectory.
Yep. Right.
Rabbi, I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to point out that, after, 6 or 7 years of this class, we've got 8 people in this meet right now. And I'm just excited that we're still going. So thank you for all the time and appreciation.
Thank you. Shkoyach. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Laila Tov.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
They never cared about motivation. If somebody pushed someone accidentally, they threw something at them accidentally, that doesn't count.
No. That 100%. We go into intention because we have to have in according to Torah. It's very interesting. In order for someone to be considered chayiv, that you get put to death, the person has to acknowledge that what I'm about to do is going to kill the person, and I know that if I do it, I may get killed by the courts. I'm going to do it anyways. So not only do we analyze the intention, the person, he or she actually has to express the intention and confirm that I tend to kill this person, and notwithstanding knowing the law. Means if even ignorance in the law according to halacha would prevent a person from being put to death.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Great class. Thank you.